Hello friends, here I am with new story. I hope you all like the video and subscribe to my channel. So let's start the video with summary. Many subjects are often overlooked by the Olympians, especially if they have to look up, not when they believe them to be the higher than all. Never would they expect another kingdom overlooking Mount Olympus. Never would they expect another sibling, a Naruto x Hestia story. The first collaboration story by Kyoka Sanijitsu Totsuka and Soul Reaper crew. Her higher existence chapter 1. Up to this point in her life, Hestia could honestly say that she had never been happier. The years she'd spent locked away in the stomach of her father with her siblings were not the way any child would have wanted to begin their life. She could still remember little fragments of her lonely hour after being born, remember the warmth her mother irradiated that had made her once tiny body snuggled up happily to the chest of the mother of mothers. It was like she fit perfectly in the arms of the greatest mother in the world. When she saw the gold eyes of her father, she thought she saw similar warmth to that of Rhea, but instead all she remembered was a large hand grabbed her from underneath her body, bringing her up to his mouth before being swallowed into his horrifically large mouth. She could still remember the darkness that engulfed her as she fell down the neck of the Titan King and could hear the wails of her mother slowly getting quieter and quieter until absolute silence reigned. It didn't stay silent, of course. Over the course of the next couple of years she was joined by her siblings. First Demeter arrived, then Hera, who was followed by Hades, and finally Poseidon. The five of them together grew within the stomach of Kronos for years until they were finally regurgitated thanks to the efforts of their younger brother Zeus, who had disguised himself as a titan in order to rescue his brothers and sisters. Together the six named gods and goddesses rescued their uncles, the elders Cyclops and the Hecatonkaiers, and created the mighty home of the gods, Olympus. For 10 years they waged war against their father and the evil titans, and along the way continued to grow stronger in both strength and allies. Thanks to the efforts of their mother, many of the female elder titans, most of the second-generation titans, remained neutral throughout the war, and some even joined them in the fight. When the time came, a final siege was laid upon Mount Othes, which resulted in Zeus sharing the top of the mountain with his master bolt. Together the power of the Olympians, the disregarded brethren of the Titans, and the neutral Titans defeated the Titans and changed the ruling of the world. Kronos, their father, was sliced into thousands of little pieces thanks to Zeus and scattered across the plains of Tartarus. His brethren Titans were locked away deep within Tartarus inside a prison forged by the elders Cyclopses and would be forever under the watchful guard of the Hecatonkaiers. Only one was kept out of. The mighty Titan of strength and general of Kronos was placed on a new pillar of the world where he would forever be left to hold up the sky. That was his new role in life, and that would be how he would spend the rest of his days. Hestia shivered at the thought of her own battle with the mighty Titan. If it wasn't for her hero, she would have suffered a terrible fate. The victory eventually led to the splitting of the great domains that was given evenly to her three brothers. Zeus obtained the sky, Poseidon the seas, and Hades the underworld, while Zeus was also decidedly made the king of Olympus, a role many believed he had earned thanks to his efforts in the Great War in being responsible of the release of his siblings. Hestia leaned against the war marble wall of the Olympian throne room as she watched the celebration unfold in front of her. Her dark brown hair hung loosely across her left shoulder in a neat braid her mother had styled it in for her. Her dark brown dress ran all the way down to the ground, covering up her sandal-clad feet. Unlike Hera and Demeter, she didn't see the need to dress glamorously and luxuriously. She much preferred comfort over style. She brought a small silver goblet up to her mouth as she took a sip of the nectar and felt it run down the back of her throat as it warmed her already warm body. Her siblings were all located in the middle of the large white room, all doing various activities as they enjoyed the celebration they rightfully earned. Her youngest brother was happily making googly eyes with the Oceanid Metis, the daughter of Oceanus and Tethys that he had known almost all of his life, his childhood love in a sense. They were very sweet together and she brought out the best in Zeus. Hestia fully supported their eventual union. She tried not to laugh as she watched Helios try to sweet-talk Hera, who looked to be in no mood to chat with the Titan of the Sun. If she knew her sister as well as she did, then the recently made goddess of marriage would without a doubt lose her temper at some point in the next few minutes. It was amazing to her that Helios still tried to woo her. She had turned him down countless times already, but their cousin was still trying and was being very persistent. Hestia did not envy him. Hera's temper had only grown fiercer over their time at war. Poseidon unsurprisingly was speaking with a large group of Oceanids, showing off his godly weapon, the trident. By the look on his face he was trying to woo them as well, but unlike Helios, it was actually working. Hestia rolled her eyes at her brother's antics as the Oceanids fluttered their eyes at him and grazed their hands across his arms. Unsurprising and making her groan at the sight was Hades and Demeter bickering in the corner as always. Ever since they first met in the stomach of their father, the two never really got along. Hades would constantly pick on his sister, which would cause Demeter to call him some kind of creative insult. This then caused the two to bicker until she broke them up. "How are you enjoying the celebration, my daughter?" A melodic voice spoke as Hestia turned her head to see her mother coming over to her and taking the spot next to her. The mother of the Olympians had always been looked upon as the most beautiful Titaness of all. She has long black hair with silver tips that went all the way down to a lower back, hanging loosely like a brilliant black curtain. Her eyes were a brilliant green that rivaled emeralds in worth and a smile that was as bright and dazzling as the sun. To all of the Olympians she was the most important person in the entire cosmos, and it was her bravery that truly started the downfall of the Titans and the rise of the gods. Hestia leaned her body to the side while gently rubbing her head on the shoulder of her Rhea, who happily pecked her on the forehead with a light kiss. "I am mother. It is a joyous time. When our family has fought for over a decade. To think your father is no longer in power. It doesn't seem to be real. For many eons he has controlled the world, and now he is nothing more than pieces scattered across the depths of Tartarus, just like he did with our father before him." Rhea exclaimed as her eyes had a far-off look to them, remembering a time that was far less complicated. "You never believed we could beat him?" Hestia asked as curiosity appeared on her face. Rhea gave her a small half-smile. "I never doubted any of you. But believing it will happen and seeing it happen are two very different things." "True," Hestia responded as their attention turned to their siblings. "I just hope we don't fall under the same curse that fell onto the Titans. Pride is a weakness of our family." "It won't, sweet daughter. I won't allow it to happen. I would sooner fade than allow that to happen." Rhea's voice was sweet and loving, which calmed Hestia's thoughts before she smiled at the sight of her youngest son. "Your brother seems happy. I thought he might follow in the footsteps of all the kings of the past and marry one of his sisters, but I see I might be wrong on this one," Rhea said as they watched Zeus dance with Metis in the middle of the throne room. The smile on her youngest son's face made a warm feeling appear in her heart. "Yes, you're right. Zeus' might and power along with Metis' wisdom and knowledge will make them a fine king and queen," Hestia muttered as their eyes focused on the god of the sky. "I would not be surprised if we have new godlings born in the coming months." Hestia noticed her mother's face get excited at the prospect of grandchildren. The idea of children running around Olympus did make her heart warm and flutter, and could only imagine what that prospect was like for Rhea. For so long her mother must have believed grandchildren would never happen with their father kicking them in his stomach. While Rhea did not have much of a chance to raise her own children when they were young because of this, she would help raise her grandchildren and help make them fine gods and goddesses. "What about you?" Rhea asked as she interrupted Hestia's train of thought. "There are many of the younger Titans that have taken an interest in you, sweet daughter. Are there any that have taken your interest?" At her mother's words, Hestia had a tinge of red appear on her beautiful face and quickly turned her head away in the other direction. Rhea though had already seen the look on her face as her eyes sparkled in interest. "Oh, so someone has. Tell me who?" "There is no one, mother. Stop prying into something that's not there. Come now, don't be defensive." "It is perfectly natural for a mother to ask these questions," Rhea said with a smile and a wink. "So who is it? Is it Helios? Or maybe Prometheus? I don't see it being dear Perseus, far too destructive that one. Tell me who it is, Hestia." "Like I said, there is no one," Hestia vehemently denied despite Rhea not believing any of it. Her daughter's interest had been captured by someone and truly wondered who it was. Before Rhea could continue to question her, however, her youngest daughter could be heard above the voices of the others in the room. "I said no, Helios. Now get your fiery ass out of my sight." Rhea sighed while Hestia breathed easier at seeing her mother's focus shift towards her younger sister. "I'd best go and calm your sister before she kicks your cousin off Olympus. Honestly, your sister's temper seems to be getting worse lately. I'm starting to wonder if I should send her somewhere to learn how to keep that temper in check," Rhea muttered before kissing Hestia on the cheek and leaving towards her other daughter as Helios continued to hit on her, which only further flared her temper. As the party and celebration continued throughout the day, Hestia remained in her spot as she happily avoided all of the drama that came with the day. She was quite content, whereas she dug into some nectar and ambrosia while making small talk with the siblings or titans that came to speak with her. High above Olympus, despite what many thought, the sky was not actually the top of the world. There was a level above the sky seen as the very edge of the world. It lay between the sky and the vast vacuum of space. The part of the world that controlled the very climates and atmosphere of the planet and protected the world from the various powers and elements of the universe. Despite what the gods and goddesses of Olympus believed, they were not the first of their kind like they first believed. Looking down on Olympus with incredible hawk-like vision was a pair of beautiful and sparkling blue eyes that looked like bright sapphires that swirled around like the eye of a hurricane. Spiky golden blonde hair decorated the top of his head, while his skin was a rich tan color that had a golden glow to it against the dark sky. He resembled a young adult roughly around in the early 20s, but with a playful but confident look and aura about him. He was dressed in a light blue chiton that fell down to his knees with golden lining around the edges. Dark brown sandals covered his feet and a green emerald necklace hung loosely around his neck. Above him lay the dark void of space, illuminated by the thousands and thousands of stars that twinkled and shone like little flicks of candles. He was so high in the world that the daylight didn't exist and night reigned over completely. Beneath him was the cool dirt of his floating sky island as it hovered high above the world, barren and lifeless, with only a few streams of water and scarce forests laying across the landscape. The island was large, roughly around twice the size of Olympus. The man's lips pursed as his gaze looked across the throne room of Olympus, watching as the immortal dances and celebrated their victory over the Titan King. He watched as the Titan of the Sun failed to woo the recently named goddess of marriage and watched them almost come to blows if it was not for his mother calming them down. Yes, his mother. The mother of the gods herself, Rhea. His existence was one of the greatest kept secrets there had ever been. His birth was kept from almost every immortal in the world except for a select few, which included his Rhea and his father. He was raised by his father and had not seen his mother since he was a young boy, where she used to visit him whenever she could. Over time, though, that stopped when she married the Titan of Time. He resented that a lot of attention from his mother had been taken from him, but took a seat in the background as his mother went on to have 6 more children. When his siblings took the fight to their father, he wanted to aid them, but he was stopped by his father, who told him it was not his fight nor should it be his problem. They may have been his siblings, but they were not his family. So he didn't act for a long time, but would have to admit that during the more troubling times of the Titan War he lent a subtle helping hand when he could in secret. Even during the final battle on the top of the Titan stronghold, he in secret helped keep the Titans at bay, though was seriously scolded by his father for doing so immediately after. He knew that despite not being raised with them, they were still his siblings, whether he wanted them or not. Looking down on Olympus, and despite the events that were happening throughout the throne room, the only interest he truly had was the beautiful goddess that was hanging back from the party and observing it in a similar manner to him. She didn't seem all that into it, even when people were coming up to greet her. She looked almost as if she was an outsider and being part of something that she felt she had no place in. He was fully aware of the war and what took place between the Titans and the gods. He knew that out of the 6 children of Kronos and Rhea, it was only Hestia who had believed that peace was possible between the 2 factions, while everyone else believed war was the only answer. The goddess of the hearth wasn't a fighter, nor was she a violent or ill-tempered woman like Hera was portraying herself to be. She was a likable woman with a warm heart and a gentle and soothing voice, and she had caught his undivided attention. As time dragged on, his eyes began to follow Hestia as she slowly crept out of the throne room, unbeknownst to everyone in the room who were too preoccupied to notice. His lips slowly curled into a smile as he watched her walk away before his entire body glowed brightly and disappeared, his destination clear in his head. With Hestia walked the empty streets of Olympus, which was an odd sight to see. Normally, since the creation of Olympus over a decade ago, it was normally filled with satyrs and nymphs that had joined their side along with the good Titans and other members of their family. Looking around at her family's new home, she really had to admire the work and craftsmanship of her uncles, the elder Cyclopses. They had done a miraculous job in the construction of Olympus and made sure that the beautiful white temples and building helped to usher in and represent a new age of the world. Their others uncles, the Hecatonkars, were guarding the entrance Tartarus and had a feeling they would be too big to even set foot on Olympus. You know, one such as yourself shouldn't wander the empty streets all alone. Even on Olympus people might get the wrong kind of idea in their head. She heard as her head turned and watched as a blonde-haired man who watched her from above appeared on the side of the street. He leaned against the side of one of the marble buildings while crossing his arms and giving Hestia a small smile. He watched her turn her body to face him and did his best to stop his smile from getting any wider when he saw her place hands on her hips and raise her delicate eyebrows. "I can take good care of myself, thank you very much." With a soft breeze, the young man blew past Hestia and re-emerged behind her with his arms wrapped around her waist. The familiar sensation of warmth and comfort surrounded Hestia and she couldn't help but smile and rest against his chest. As usual, his scent was fresh and sweet, and it calmed her nerves completely. Unlike any other male immortal, he made her feel safe and secure. "I know you can, but I still worry. I don't want anyone to mess with my beautiful Hestia." "Your Hestia?" she asked with a smile. "Since when did that happen, Naruto?" Naruto hugged Hestia closer to his chest and nuzzled his face against her blissfully soft hair. "Since you said there was something more between us than friendship." He gently kissed the side of her head and smiled wider. "I'm going to hold you to those words forever." Hestia couldn't help but giggle as she turned within his arms to face him. "But don't worry, I'm yours as well." "I should hope so." Hestia spoke as she thought back to her first meeting with the man in front of her. Flashback. The defiant eye of Hestia stared up at the towering form of a large brute of a man as his enormously large hands covered the entirety of her own and kept them subdued. He towered over her a good height and half as she barely came up to his chest. In his other hand was a long javelin made of imperial gold that was coated in golden ichor, the blood of the immortals. "What will you do now, little goddess?" The man spat as his large dark eyes glared into her own fiery brown eyes, the look of madness and murder easily being spotted within them. The feeling around her hands worsened as he tightened his grip on her hands and causing a searing pain to rush through her. She wasn't supposed to leave Olympus. She wasn't a fighter like her brothers and sister were, but after feeling Poseidon get wounded on the battlefield, she rushed to aid her younger brother. A foolish mistake, since the moment she left she was grabbed by her cousin and the general of the Titans, Atlas. His dark hair was a mess from battle with the blood of the immortals covering him, though he looked like he had his own wounds covering his body, which included a charred-looking left leg. No doubt a gift from Zeus and his master Bolt. "Release me, you brute," she complained as she tried to kick Atlas, but each strike was nothing that could harm a titan like Atlas, who was second only to Kronos. No, I don't think I will," Atlas told her. "You and your siblings have been a thorn in my side for too long. The world was run by the Titans happily until you and those gods decided to try and take it from us. You would sooner destroy it than run the world in peace. Peace is for the weak. Only the strong survive, and I will make an example out of you, girl." Atlas reddened as fear began to spread through Hestia's body. There was a whole number of things Atlas could do to someone like Hestia. Send her to Tartarus, forcefully take her maidenhood, enslave her on Mount Othrys, torture her for an eternity. All of them would bring a great pain to her and would make her even more of a hindrance to her siblings who were already fighting. "And my brothers and sister won't allow you to do this. They will see you are not on the battlefield," she told him, trying to keep calm but her trembling voice giving her away. In the background the sounds of fighting could be heard, as well as the sounds of the exploding shots of the Master Bolt. Atlas turned his head before turning back and had a sick, violent grin appear on his face. "They will never know. Not while my brethren keep them busy," he told her before she watched him bring his javelin up, glinting as the rays of the sun hit it. Before this strike could land, however, both Hestia and Atlas suddenly felt the air around them become thick with power as the wind picked up and was strong enough that it made Atlas falter in his stance, while some of the trees around them began to get sucked up into the air and thrown away like they weighed nothing. It felt as if a tornado suddenly appeared around them and they were in the very heart of it. Both Hestia and Atlas looked around as the power in the air got stronger and stronger to the point where Atlas was beginning to sweat. Both of them slowly began to pick up a loud thrumming noise coming from high above them. Both looked to the sky, neither saw anything but clouded skies. It wasn't Zeus's thunder either, since it could still be heard in the distance fighting the Titan forces. "What trickery is this?" Atlas questioned as he tried to grip Hestia tighter. Only without any warning he felt sharp slices hit his wrists, which made him break his grip and release Hestia. Before either could react, Hestia felt herself being lifted by the wind and flown a distance away from Atlas, who was trying to reach out to her. Above them the noise got louder and louder until eventually they saw what it was. Hestia was dropped gently on the hillside a long distance away from Atlas, who was being kept at bay by a strange wall of wind, cutting him when he dared to try and leave. Above the sky and making Hestia's eye widen in a way she never thought possible, she watched as large rock the size of the hill she was on descended down towards the earth with blazes of fire and smoke coming off of it. It made the very ground she stood on shake as if the area was being hit with 100 bolts of lightning. She could see Atlas trying to escape the dome of wind around him, and for the first time in a very long time actually fearing for his life. Despite being a peaceful goddess, she just couldn't look away for a second as the enormous rock got closer and closer towards the ground until eventually it hit. When it hit, the sound was so loud that for a moment she thought she had gone deaf as silence just completely reigned. Billows of smoke and dust got swept up thousands of feet into the air until the sound suddenly came back and caused her to cover her ear from how loud it was. The shock wave from the hit was so strong that the clouds in the sky were suddenly forced away and made the blue sky of Hemera appear before her. The landscape also began changing as the hillsides, trees and rock were thrown away like weightless stick and pebbles. As she saw it coming closer towards her, she was about to teleport away and go back to Olympus when a hand appeared on her shoulder. "Don't move. You won't be harmed," a gentle voice told her as the shock wave of the impact reached her. But to her surprise it avoided her and this person and went around them. Not even a flicker of wind rustled through her hair. Eventually, after 10 minutes, the impact began to die down and the wind slowly began to return to normal, as well as the clouds in the sky beginning to return to their previous place. Her body trembled at the kind of power it took to bring a falling rock from beyond the clouds. She knew there was no way in Tartarus that Atlas could have survived that impact. He was hit head-on with such intensity that she dreaded to think of the kind of pain he felt. All around her the earth and landscape had been reduced to rubble and was now a wasteland. She was so thankful many of the resident satyrs and nymphs had fled long ago when the two opposing forces began fighting hours earlier just some miles away. With that thought, she wondered if her siblings were okay. They must have seen and felt the impact as well. Turning around and looking up, she looked at the sapphire-like eyes that looked back at her and for the first time ever felt a warmth grab her heart. "Hey, I may have overdone it a little," he said as he chuckled nervously and scratched the back of his head before he looked down at her. "I'm glad you're safe. I would hate for anything to happen to you after wanting to meet you for so long." And flashback, what are you thinking about? He asked as he looked down at her beautiful face and admired those smoldering eyes of hers. Hestia felt him nestled into the side of her head. Since the moment they first met, she felt some kind of attraction to him. And that attraction continued to grow and grow as they spent more time with one another when Hestia was apart from her siblings or when the war was not taking over their lives. For a goddess that swore she would never fall in love and never marry, Hestia could honestly say she could imagine an eternal and happy life with him. Maybe even start a family with him. Something she had always been very hesitant against. After being swallowed by her father, the idea of being married and mothering a child always put a great fear into her. But yet with this man holding her, she didn't feel those kinds of fears. She felt safe, safer even when she was with her siblings. It just felt right. "I was just thinking of how we met. The day you saved me from Atlas." She could hear and feel the growl in his chest, which internally thrilled her. She felt his arms tighten around her along with a small kiss to the side of her head. "And I would save you over and over again. I would rather fate than let someone like Atlas ever harm you again. That I swear on the sticks." He swore and both heard the thunder boom overhead. What he got back was the sweet smile that he had come to adore and love so much. The very idea of this beautiful, wonderful woman in his arms being harmed made his very being become angry and rageful. Nothing would stop him from ever causing great pain and strife onto his enemies. Leaning forward, his lips gently connected to Hestia's, sending a warm tingle to race through their bodies. Their hands tangled into each other's hair while their bodies gently rubbed against one another. Her taste, her smell, everything about her. He knew he was becoming addicted to this woman. Just as the two were beginning to get more and more into the kiss, a sharp gasp came from the side of them and quickly caused them to stop and snap their eyes open. They slowly turned their heads and found none other than Rhea standing there looking at the two of them, her jaw hanging and eyes wide. Both gulped and prepared for what came next, knowing full well they had just been discovered by the worst possible person. their mother. Order and chaos help us. A higher existence. Chapter 2. There were very few moments Naruto had never wanted to experience. What was currently happening was one that was very close to the top of the list. His mother discussing his relationship with his girlfriend. Said girlfriend who also happened to be his half-sister. Since she spotted them together, Rhea at first was in shock at the whole ordeal, never imagining to find her eldest daughter with her true eldest son and child locking lips with one another. Before either Naruto or Hestia could respond, she had grabbed a hold of both of them and immediately teleported away. All three quickly found themselves inside Hestia's temple, which was on the other side of Olympus and far away from the throne room where the party was currently being held. Before Naruto could say a word, he felt Rhea's arm latched around him and felt her tears flowing down his chest as she nuzzled into him. He could hear sobs coming from her and saw Hestia smile sadly, remembering that Rhea and Naruto had not seen one another in many years. Naruto chuckled lightly as he returned the hug and embraced his mother warmly, putting his chin on top of her head while his hands gently rubbed her back in comfort as they hugged for the first time in many years. She looked the same as he remembered her when he was a child. The same black hair with silver tips that he would grab onto with his pudgy little hands and would always make her laugh and coo at him. Or when they would bathe together and she would run her hands through his damp golden hair that always sent tingles going down his spine in a way only a mother could provide. She even smelled the same, with a sweet scent of jasmine emanating from her that tickled his nose. "Oh, I've missed you so much," Rhea sobbed as her green eyes looked up towards her son's blue ones. She hadn't seen him since he was an adolescent, since it would have been too dangerous to visit him, with Kronos gaining interest in her more and more at the time. She dreaded to think what he could have done if he found out she already had a child that she dearly loved with someone else. "I've missed you too. You haven't aged a day," he joked and got a light slap on the chest as Rhea broke off from him and wiped her eyes with her hand, the odd sniffling still coming from her. "You joker. You know we don't age," Rhea told him, even though he already knew that. Her eldest had always had a prankster side of him. She wasn't sure who he got that from. "I know, but I still say it. It bugs Dad like crazy." Hestia felt a little out of place as she watched the reunion between them, but felt happy at the scene she was witnessing. Rhea composed herself, waving her hand, making the red puffiness disappeared from under her eyes before a steely look appeared on her face. She crossed her arms and pointed towards the sofa beside her. "Sit, both of you." Both quickly complied and sat on the comfortable sofa, both with their backs straight as Rhea stood in front of them, staring at both of them intently. "So, explain to me how this came about. I want to know everything, and do not leave anything else. And no lying either. I'll know if you're lying." So they did just that. They took turns in telling the story of how they met and how Naruto had saved her from Atlas. How they had secretly met up over the next few years, doing their best to keep the other titans and gods in the dark about his existence. As Rhea listened, her smile was slowly growing wider and wider with every word, and could quickly see how much her two children had come to care for one another. The way they spoke about one another, the way they glanced at each other, and how their hands kept grazing against one another's was a clear indication of how strong their connection was. "Oh, this is just perfect," she thought as her eyes sparkled with amusement. "Hold on. If you had been watching the war all this time, then why did you not get involved?" Rhea asked curiously. "Father warned me not to get involved," Naruto told her, getting a frown from Rhea. "He said the war had nothing to do with me and that I shouldn't go looking for trouble. That they might have been my siblings, but they were not my family. My family was with him and his family. His father, while he loved him dearly, could be very strict when he felt strongly about something, and this was one of them. He saw no reason or benefit to get involved, since the children and grandchildren of God were never close to him or his side of their very large and somewhat complicated family. Well, everyone but Rhea, but that had long since ended." "So does that mean you have your titles as well? Your godly titles?" Rhea asked, her interest peaking as she made another sofa appear behind her and draped herself across it. She had been there for the giving of titles and domains for both her siblings and her children. After Zeus, Poseidon and Hades had chosen their domains, it was Rhea that helped give her daughters their domains that best matched them and their abilities and powers. Hestia, with her warmth and loving heart, was easy to decide. She was perfect for the role of goddess of the hearth. Demeter, with her overprotective nature and trying to make sure everyone was well fed and healthy, fit the role of goddess of the agriculture. Hera finally had seen the love between married couples, both mortal and immortal, and had gained a great respect for it and urge for it. the goddess of marriage was accurately given to her. So if her sons had chosen the sky, sea and underworld, then what did her other son choose? Well, father and stepmother had helped with my domains. He said he wanted me to have something that fit my personality and something that connected me with them. It took a while, but it was decided that I would be the god of the upper air, meteors, constellations and fatherhood. Wow, Rhea said, taking a deep breath as those titles ran through her mind. They were some very powerful titles and shouldn't have been surprised that his father gave him upper air. It proved how much he cared for his son to share in his domain. The rest though she could happily agree with, since he had a connection to all of them. When he was little he would always look up at the night sky and stare up at the stars and fallen stars that danced across the skies. Rhea could help but giggle at the last one. Fatherhood, huh? She asked and turned to look at Hestia, who was developing a blush on her cheeks at what her mother was insinuating. It took a moment, but Naruto caught on and blushed too, making the young couple to turn their heads away from one another, much to their mother's delight. Are you planning for something in the future perhaps? Mother, please don't look into it. It was a fine and honorable title to have and no one else possessed it, nothing more than that. At least not yet. Rhea sang to herself, causing her daughter to tap her foot on the floor in annoyance. Something you want to say, honey? Hestia huffed but didn't say anything, the annoyance on her face clearly evident before another could be spoken though. The door to Hestia's temple opened up, causing Hestia to quickly glance at Naruto, only for the blonde-haired god to suddenly disappear in a flash of gold. It was a good thing he did, as Demeter walked into the room, looking breathtakingly beautiful in a long dark green dress that helped enhance her already great beauty. Hello, daughter, Rhea greeted as Demeter stepped inside and walked towards them both. What are you both doing in here? The celebration is far from over. We were all wondering where you both were. Demeter told them, finding it strange her mother and elder sister were not partaking in the throne room. Just having some quiet time, Rhea responded with Hestia nodding her head in confirmation. Demeter didn't look too convinced, but she had a bit of a buzz on, so she didn't care all too much. Well, I just thought you should know Helios tried to flirt with Hera again, Demeter told them and laughed at tired and annoyed look Rhea gave while Hestia giggled into her hand. She's chasing him around Olympus, promising to castrate him. The look she is giving him tells me she's not kidding. Honestly, I think I'm going to have words with your sister about her temper. This is getting out of hand, Rhea muttered as she walked out of the temple, her hands itching for a good slap. Demeter followed after her but stopped and turned to Hestia, who was still on the sofa. Are you coming, sister? I'll be back later. I'm going to enjoy some silence before returning back to the celebrations. No doubt there will be much singing once the night sets in, Hestia told her, making Demeter shrug, since it was nothing unusual for Hestia to want some alone time. The moment Demeter left the temple, a flash of gold appeared next to Hestia, revealing Naruto sitting back next to her. Who was it? Just Demeter. Hera is chasing Helios around Olympus, threatening to castrate him, Hestia told him with a laugh, making him grin. Wanna watch it together? Of course. Waving his hand across the air, they both watched as Helios appeared in the screen, running for his life with a panicked look on his face. Behind him was an enraged Hera chasing after him with a golden sword in her hands, swinging away with the hope of catching him with the tip. Coward! I'll show you why you don't flirt with me, you stupid sunspot. Crazy bitch. It was just a pickup line. No, no, no. This simply won't do. What? Why not? What's wrong with it? Naruto, there is nothing here. It's just a complete wasteland floating beyond the sky, Rhea told him as she shook her head and crossed her arms over her chest. Why in the world would you think this is a good place to live? Mother and son were currently standing at the center of Naruto's floating island, having spent the day in each other's company now that the celebrations on Olympus were finally over. The celebrations had lasted almost 3 days non-stop, with Rhea beginning to wonder if it was ever going to end. Thankfully, Metis has convinced Zeus to spend some alone time together in his temple, something which Zeus quickly agreed to. With the king gone, the party slowly began to wither until it had finally ended. Poseidon had immediately gone back to the ocean, overseeing the building of his underwater kingdom, starting with the palace that he had decided to name Atlantis. Hades had done the same and left back for the underworld and began constructing his own palace. Given how dark her son was, she wasn't overexcited to see what he created. Naruto had decided to take her to where he lived, and well, Rhea was not very impressed. It's not a complete wasteland. It got an May. It's got some trees, he murmured, but Rhea just continued to look unimpressed. There's a cute little stream over there too. Doesn't it look nice? No. Naruto's head dropped as a tiny cloud appeared above his head as the cruelty of his mother's words, dramatic just like your brother's. Rhea tsked before she placed a hand on his shoulders and made him look towards the vast open spaces of the island. Look out, Naruto, and look at the island. Can't you see the potential it has? Well, I guess it could be livened up a bit. Maybe a temple or something would be nicer than a hammock in the trees, Naruto said. Rhea looked over and saw the makeshift hammock against the trees and just continued to shake her head. Her son was a god with powers most could only dreamed of. It was time he started living more to his station. Your siblings all have their homes and have done what they can to make it their own. Zeus, Hera, Demeter and Hestia on Olympus, Poseidon in Atlantis and Hades in the underworld. You should not be left out. Make a home for yourself here. The island is easily big enough. Hasn't your father said anything? In fact, I have, Rhea. A voice bellowed overhead before a bright light shined in front of them. Neither looked away since they could both survive seeing a god's true form as the light engulfed the entire island. Quickly the light took the form of a person as stood just a few feet away from Naruto and Rhea. Once the area around them returned to normal, it was very clear who stood in front of them. He looked a lot like Naruto with the same golden blonde hair, though his looked like the strand were all made of individual pieces of light. He was of similar height and build and had similar blue eyes. Though his were so bright, his eyes looked like they were miniature suns. Even his clothing were white and golden, which added more to his handsome face. He looked first towards Rhea and gave her a short nod. Hello, Rhea. Rhea gave him a small curtsy back. It's good to see you after so long, Ether. Naruto's head quickly darted between the two and could only gulp at the looks both were giving him. It was bad enough when one of them were trying to teach him something. With both of them here, it was only going to get even worse. Though he supposed he could see the merit of what they were talking about. His father's palace and kingdom with Hemera was one full of wonder and great joy that was like an epicenter of hope and love as he grew up. The Golden City left so much to be desired and only a select few ever got to visit. Not even many of the Titans and other immortals had visited. He recalled his grandmother Nyx visiting from time to time. Despite the scary appearance at first glance, she was really a pretty cool grandmother and was very loving towards him. She even nicknamed him her sweet little heaven cloud. It always made his father laugh and would make his face heat up in embarrassment. Ether moved beside his son, sandwiching the younger immortal between his parents. The island has much potential to it. I agree with your mother that you should make this your home and base of operation. You are a god, one more powerful than most, stronger than Titans and even the recently named Olympians. It's fitting you have a kingdom of your own. I'm glad we agree on something. Rhea responded as she waved her hand across the landscape. Naruto watched a dense forest, far larger than the tiny one that came with the island, formed together, engulfing the small stream along with it. You should have many different qualities to your home. A dense forest you can fill with wildlife would be a wonderful way of starting. That would bring a lot of color, Naruto admitted. Some plants and various flowers to maybe? It would really brighten it up, I guess. A wonderful idea, Rhea told him. She clapped her hand as Naruto watched hundreds, if not more, flowers and plants bloom all across the ground and along the sides of the forest. As the Titan of earthly elements, Rhea was the person for this job and he could see she enjoyed it. Any more ideas? Naruto tapped his chin before an idea came to mind. His parents watched as he held his hand up to the sky and suddenly wiped his palm against the black sky. In seconds the black sky suddenly became covered in tiny little stars that were so bright that Rhea was mesmerized by them since they felt it close too. Naruto then clapped his hands just like Rhea had moments ago, this time making tiny shooting stars fly across the sky every couple of seconds. A fine display of your powers, my son, Ether admitted as he patted him on the shoulder. He gave him another pat on the back when Naruto made a constant gentle breeze now supply itself to the island. It was cool against the skin but wasn't cold by any mean. It was very soothing and made the hairs on their arms stand up. The parents just sat back and let their son do the work as he began shifting the terrain of the island, making a small mountain appear on the island on the east side. Another clap of his hands created an enormous waterfall to begin falling from one side of the mountain and creating a small lake around the base that reached up towards the recently made forest. Do you think we could get some nymphs up here to help take care of the water and forests? Naruto asked. It would help immensely since nymphs were essentially the caretakers of nature. I'm sure we can find some. Most would jump in joy to care for such a beautiful little paradise you're creating. The waterfall was a nice touch, Rhea added as she already began making a list of some wood nymphs she knew about that could look after the forest. What about your temple? I'm sure I can find someone to build it for you from my domain. Ether added but was quickly cut down by Rhea who shook her head negatively. No. I know the perfect people for job. The elder Cyclopses are the best craftsmen and builders in the world. If anyone should build it then it should be them. They will do a phenomenal job I'm sure. Is that wise, Rhea? What if your other children catch wind of his existence? Ether frowned. He wasn't overly keen on the idea since he preferred people from his lineage stayed out of the affairs of other immortals. He can just see the Olympians being a very dramatic and petty bunch and his son was apparently romantically interested in one of them. Oh, don't start. One day they will meet and whenever that day should be I'm sure they will get on. They are my children and a mother knows these things, Rhea told him. Ether just looked at Naruto who just shrugged. He wasn't going to argue with her. The elder Cyclopses are the way to go, trust me. For the next hour Naruto alongside Rhea slowly began filling the island with the life of animals. Many animals big and small slowly began forming from the sky and ground and quickly began making their homes in the forest while others began making use of the recently made lake. He made sure to create oxygen so the animals could survive. It would suck if they just died instantly. As wonderful as this is, I did come here for other reasons, Ether admitted as Naruto and Rhea both turned to look in his direction. Both were wondering what the primordial of the upper air and light wanted to say. Every great immortal needs a signature weapon to name his own and you are no different my son. Kronos had his scythe, Zeus has his master bolt, Poseidon his trident, Hades his helm, Atlas his javelin. Now as my son and Rhea's eldest child it's about time you had one of your own too. With his words Ether clapped his hands causing a light to shine directly down from the vast vacuum of space above them. The light slowly shifted into a shape until very quickly a beautiful yet powerful spear appeared in front of Naruto, buried into the ground. Hammer and I forged it together with our powers. Once you grab the spear it will connect itself with you and become bound to you. Only you will be able to use it and will aid you with your domains. It's incredible. What's it made of? Naruto asked as he looked the spear over. The hilt was covered in a smooth black leather while golden vine-like designs covered the black base of the spear. At the end was a gleaming metal spearhead that was so clear that his reflection could be seen from it. The power he sent from it was incredible and he could feel himself being drawn towards it. It was forged with the power and metal of a dying star, therefore connecting you fully with your domain. It is the only weapon of its kind and thus it will remain so. With you as its wielders no foe will ever be able to stand in your way. He turned to look at his mother and saw her nod her head towards him. Raising his hands he gripped the spear tight in his hand before pulling it from the ground. Immediately he felt the connection between weapon and wielder form while power boomed from Naruto's body. It was so heavy and dense that Rhea found herself struggling to stay upright while even Ether's hands twitched from the pressure. All around the world, the atmosphere was going hectic, causing the animals to go crazy. Hurricanes and tornadoes began forming in various parts of the world while the stars lit up so bright they looked ready to explode. Even Naruto's eyes glowed so bright it was as if two stars had formed in his eyes. Getting himself under control from the influx of power, the world slowly went back to normal with Naruto's eyes returning to normal. Rhea looked in sheer amazement while Ether looked proud of him. I never realized he had so much power. Rhea thought as she looked at him in wonder. He has even more than Zeus. Maybe even more. Then Kronos. Naruto gripped the spear tight before he bowed to his father. Thank you for this gift. I promise to use it wisely and just. I know you will. You will make me proud, Ether responded before disappearing, leaving mother and son alone once more. Naruto looked at the spot his father had once stood before he turned back towards Rhea. He had a more confident look on him with his godly weapon in hand. A glow appeared around the spear as Naruto began shortening it until it was half of the length of his arm and hung it tightly around his side. All in all Rhea thought he looked like a king. When his father left, he took their time alone to make a special gift just for his mother. Naruto concentrated on the stars above him and created the first constellation in honor of her. Since he knew how special her lines were to her, he made the Leo constellation for her. It would be a forever reminder high in the sky of Rhea's bravery and courage that eventually led to the end of the reign of Kronos. Unsurprisingly, she gave him a big kiss on the cheek before continuing to turn the island on the edge of the world into a place Naruto could really call home. Oh my goodness, he is so handsome. Rhea, where have you been keeping him all this time? Tethys asked as she pinched at Naruto's cheek before rubbing her face against his while Rhea laughed into her hand at the display. Naruto was looking a little put off at the sudden close interaction. His aunt, the Titaness of the Sea, former queen of the seas and wife of Oceanus, was giving him her full attention, marveling over the nephew she never knew she had. The Great Mother of the Sea was a great beauty with hair as black as midnight that went all the way down past her lower back, which was decorated with various pearls and gemstones. Her eyes were a brilliant shade of green, like little pieces of emeralds, and wore a white dress that was entirely made out of sea foam which would ripple along with the waves of the currents. Giggling around the room were some of her many daughters, which had been named the Oceanids, who were all staring at Naruto and giggling at the way their mother was treating their cousin. By the bump on her stomach, it looked like Tethys was soon to be expecting new child very soon. Rhea had spent 5 minutes congratulating her and gently stroking the small bump, wishing both mother and child luck for the coming months. Oh, his father has been looking after him. I'd say he has done a very good job, though I will continue to play a part in his life now that the war is over, Rhea responded as she pinched the other side of his face, making his face go even redder with embarrassment. Well, as wonderful as your other sons are, this one just screams in innocence and sweetness. Plus I love his hair. Oh, it looks so wonderful and it feels so silky soft too. Tethys admired, quickly making Naruto have enough of what was happening. Can you both please stop treating me like a kid? I'm mother's eldest. I bet you don't baby the others like this. He said first to Tethys and then to Rhea, causing both to begin laughing. He's sweet. Tethys whispered to Rhea, with said Titan nodding in agreement. So what do I owe this visit, sister? Is all well since the Olympians won their battle with our brother? Rhea nodded her head. They are all well. I was visiting our Cyclops brothers down in Atlantis and thought I would come and have tea with you. It's been so long since we had a nice sit down. I've missed it a great deal. The sisterly gathering was something they did quite often before the Titan War has begun and sides had been chosen. All of Rhea's sister had remained neutral in the war despite their husbands taking an active part in it. Oceanus was the only one of their brothers who also remained neutral, having no desire to involve himself in Kronos' war with his children. Now that with all but one of the sons of Gaia and Uranus locked away in Tartarus, they had a lot more free time on their hand. I have missed that too. Perhaps our sisters would like to join us too? Tethys asked and immediately got a nod from Rhea. Definitely. The more the merrier. As the two left the hallways, Naruto just stood there confused and unsure what he was supposed to do. His mother had dragged him here and yet she was now leaving for some sisterly bonding. What do I do? Can I join you? Both Titanesses turned to look at him, with Tethys clicking her fingers together. How would you like a tour of my home, sweet nephew? I can have one of my daughters show you around. Sure, that's fine, I guess. He said as he watched one of Tethys' daughters appear next to her and nod her head at the instructions her mother gave her. Quickly Tethys and Rhea left and Naruto was approached by the young woman. She looked a year or two younger than him but was very beautiful. She looked a lot like Tethys with similar features on her face, though what made her stand out was a pair of crab horns that were protruding from the top of her head. Come, Lord Naruto. Allow me to show you around. Thank you. What's your name, by the way? I didn't catch what Tethys said to you. The young woman giggled. My name is Amphitrite, one of my mother's older children. Naruto nodded his head as they began the tour. Where is your father? I was hoping I might meet him. I've never met one of the elder titans before. My father is finalizing the move to the deeper waters. Some of his supporters put up some resistance, but he is getting it under control now. He is not one who enjoys war like many of our other uncles, she informed him. As they enjoyed the tour, they both felt multiple power signatures appeared in the room their mothers were in. Naruto guessed the other daughters of Gaia had arrived and had a feeling they would be here for some time. They walked past many statues and painting, one of which was a portrait of the Titans together when they were far younger and much less power-hungry and mad. Naruto's gaze rested on it for a short while before Amphitrite motioned for him to continue following her. He could hear the laughter and giggling coming from his mother and aunts even from the other side, so he knew they were without a doubt enjoying themselves. Yeah, they would definitely be a while. A Higher Existence Chapter 3. So what do you think? Do you like it? Naruto asked as he walked across the grassy plains of his floating island. High above the skies, the goddess of the hearth walked beside him at a gentle pace. Hestia's arm was looked through his and every now and again leaned her head onto his shoulder. The stars above them twinkled brightly, evident that Naruto was in a good mood with his girlfriend being present beside him. His godly weapon was strapped to his back, with him at all times. I do. It has homely feeling and aura to it. I can feel there's a lot of you spread throughout this place. I can also feel a lot of mother here too. She helped me create the place and is responsible for creating the forest. I made the animals though, he chirped, puffing out his chest, looking very impressed with himself. How could he not be? He had made what was once a desolate wasteland as his mother described and was now a beautiful paradise with the stars and night sky forever sparkling overhead. Though I'm so glad my temple is done. I thought it was going to take forever. As Rhea had told him she would, she had managed to get the Elder Cyclops aid in building her son his temple once they were all finished with building Poseidon's palace, Atlantis. They had done such a wonderful job with Atlantis that Rhea looked forward to seeing what they could come up with for Naruto. They were a little skeptical at first since none of them had ever seen or heard of him before, but that quickly changed when they met him. Despite their rocky pasts, the Elder Cyclopses got along well with Rhea and through her they got along well with Naruto. The group formed a solid friendship with their nephew and from that they were more than happy to build his temple for him. Though Rhea made sure their absence wasn't noticed by her other children and kept them busy with some other children bonding, Naruto had watched and observed them and he quickly saw Rhea was right. The skills and craftsmanship they possessed was like nothing he had ever seen before. There was no one that could match them in that respect. They didn't rush the building process either and went through a whole ordeal of asking him various questions. Some on what materials he wanted his temple to be built out of and what jewels and stones he wanted for decorations. They even asked him what his godly symbol was, which left him stumped. That was another thing he had to come up with quickly since it was something he hadn't thought about before. Apparently his siblings had all chosen their symbols. Even Hestia had her symbol, which unsurprisingly was a hearth. Yes, of course, well done. No need to get an even bigger head than you already do, Hestia told him and laughed at the mock-hurt face he pulled at her. You and mother are so mean to me sometimes. What did I do to deserve this treatment? He muttered as a familiar rain cloud appeared above his head before he quickly waved it away in annoyance. It's just our way of reminding you what a goofball you can be, Hestia told him with her ever-sweet smile on her face. Though a moment later her smile disappeared and a look of surprise appeared as she felt her hair suddenly fall around her, going past her shoulders and stopping just past the middle of her back. She looked at Naruto, who was smiling back at her now with her normal brown headscarf in his hands. You shouldn't hide away your hair. It's such a shame to not let such beautiful brown hair be seen and admired, he told her before combing his fingers through her hair, making her feel warm and tingly. Her eyes locked onto his. You think my hair is beautiful? Of course I do. It's like a waterfall with the weight falls down your back. And I love how it curls at the very end. It's so silky and smooth that I don't ever want to stop running my hand through it, Naruto explained, making a tinge of red appear on her cheeks while her two index fingers gently poked against one another. That innocence made her look even cuter in his eyes. Do you think you could wear it down while you're with me? He asked, suddenly looking a little more shy. He knew it was up to her and he respected her decision with whatever she chose. He just really loved her hair when she let it loose. After a moment of silence, Hestia gently nodded her head. Okay, I think I can live with that, she told him, making the smile reappear on both of their faces while their looped arms tightened their grip on one another. They continued on with their little tour of Naruto's home until they arrived at what Naruto wanted to show her. So this is your temple? Our uncle had done a fine job as always, Hestia admired as they both stood at the entrance to the beautiful crafted building as Heshia's warm brown eyes looked over the building. The building was not overly big and grand like Zeus's, but a far more comfortable size similar to the one Poseidon had won Olympus. It was made mostly of white stone but with solid strands and blocks of gold interlaced into the architecture. Two large iron doors stood at the front of the building with various designs of the stars and animals etched in, while the symbol of a spear was right in the center and was made of gold. Around the temple were dozens of white pillars, each with a small torch on the side, forever alight with blue fire from the underworld. Overall it was a temple fit for a king. At least that's what Rhea had told him when she saw it. Do you want to take a look inside? I can give you a tour if you like. Hestia nodded her head and the chick began walking up the steps. Naruto pushed the large doors open and let Hestia in first before following after. The inside was just as nice as the outside with cool marble flooring that was so glossy you could almost see a full reflection looking back. Naruto, is that what I think it is? Hestia asked. She took one step inside of the room where he slept and immediately saw to the right of inside was a large hearth. She recognized it immediately since it was her domain, though currently there was no fire lit in the center of it and no warmth was being generated. She turned to look at the blonde who was currently rubbing the back of his neck. He looked slightly embarrassed. Yeah, I thought since we spend so much time together you would like a way to come up here without needing me to bring you here every time. That way you can come and go whenever you please. He told her while Hestia looked back and forth from Naruto and the hearth. It resembled the one on Olympus a lot, though a little smaller, with a small pillar standing next to it with a godly symbol engraved on it in gold. Naruto paid close attention to her, wondering what her answer was going to be. He truly hoped she agreed since he wanted to spend more time with the woman he had such strong feeling for. He enjoyed being in her presence since it made him feel so warm inside and couldn't help but feel his heart and stomach flip every time she smiled, laughed and winked at him. He was pretty sure he was in love with this wonderful woman. He watched closely before he smiled happily and let out a sigh of relief when she waved her hand. A beautiful orange fire rose from the hearth, fully connecting itself with Hestia while he noticed her eyes glowing a burnt orange color briefly as it connected with her powers. There we go. Now I can come to scold and laugh at you whenever I want to, Hestia joked before being silenced when Naruto pressed his lips to hers. It caught her off guard momentarily before gently reciprocating the kiss. Her hands guided themselves through his blonde hair just as his did the same with hers. It went on for another 10 seconds before the kiss heated up. She felt his tongue gently pressed for entrance into her mouth and ultimately decided to let him through. Since being with him she had felt herself become more bold and brave when she was around him. Before they had met, something like a heated kiss would have scared her and sent her running for safety. Yet now here she was with her tongue doing battle with her man's tongue. That's right. Her man and no one else's. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. They heard and both groaned when they saw Rhea looking at them amused. They quickly broke apart and both looked annoyed. It was like she had some kind of sixth sense when the two were being affectionate with one another. They both started to wonder if they were ever going to have some time to themselves without their meddling mother interrupting them. How does she keep appearing at the worst possible moments? 10 years later, so let me get this straight. Poseidon is getting married? Correct. Getting married to Amphitrite, the daughter of Antitheus and Uncle Oceanus? Correct again. But Amphitrite ran away. Poseidon got all moppy, which explained why the seas were a constant mess for weeks until one of his followers convinced her otherwise. Am I getting this right? That's the gist of it, Hestia told him as she neared finishing doing her hair. I was surprised too. I knew he had been searching for a wife lately, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised he picked someone with a strong connection to the sea just like him. And when I see them together I can't help but admit they are very sweet together. Well, as long as he treat her well, then I guess I can't really complain, Naruto responded back as he waved his hands over the night sky and played around with the stars in the night sky through the top of Hestia's temple. They were together in Hestia's temple with Naruto coming to see her off to the grand wedding under the sea. All of the Olympus had been invited naturally, as well as their allies who helped them against the Titans. Demeter was coming to meet with Hestia so they could leave together while they would meet Hera at Atlantis. Hera had been living with Tethys and Oceanus in the ocean for the last 3 years since her temper had finally gotten out of control. From what Hestia could tell from her sister, she was doing a lot better and her temper and arrogant behavior was under much better control. She had gone kicking and screaming but relented when Rhea threatened to physically scold her in front of everyone by spanking her bottom. Suffice to say, it got her moving very quickly down to the ocean floor. So tell the truth. How do I look? Hestia asked as she finally finished her hair and turned to get his opinion. Her room reflected Hestia a great deal in preferring comfort over size. It was so warm that the time Naruto came into the room it felt like he was being hugged by a giant pillow, like the moment he waked you from sleep. It took a lot of bargaining with him to get him to leave when she sensed Demeter heading towards her temple once. He was almost caught if it wasn't for a look her mother taught her when wanting a man to get out of the room. It came in handy many times. Naruto stopped what he was doing and just stared at Hestia, who was dressed in a beautiful dark red dress that brought out all of her hidden beauty that she spent most days hiding. Around the edges were golden stitchings and the dress itself was made of silk, woven together from the great work of the nymph that lived on Olympus. Her hair was pinned up in an intricate design that Naruto couldn't understand but loved anyway, with a golden hair clip keeping her hair in one piece. Despite not going to the wedding, in Naruto's eyes Hestia was going to look even more beautiful than the bride-to-be. Perfect, he whispered, but Hestia had heard him. A small smile appeared on her face as she felt his arms wrap around her tenderly and look down in her eyes. I'm really hoping now that no one dares to make a move on you or try something they shouldn't. Oh? And what if they do? She already knew what he would do, but it was always fun to ask and tease him. Like the men in her family, they were quite possessive of things they dubbed was theirs, and Naruto was no different in that retrospect. Then they can expect a meteor the size of the Greece to plummet straight into them, Naruto said in a dark tone as he pulled her closer to him and in a tighter grip. Very idea of someone trying to hit on the woman he loved made his ire boil. When he got angry, his spear of valor matched his emotions and would glow a bright color when he got angry. Then you should come with me. Maybe then other male gods and titans would get the idea into their heads that I won't ever be theirs or one of their conquests, Hestia explained as she watched the anger in his face drain away, leaving only a sorry look. You know why I can't, at least not yet. Besides, after what happened with poor Metis, I don't think introducing me to someone like Zeus yet would be a very good idea, Naruto explained, making Hestia also look sad. I'm sure that kind of drama is not the kind Poseidon or Amphitrite are looking for in their day of union. The thought of Metis made everyone on Olympus and outside of it feel sorry for the poor woman. How could they not when she fell to such a tragedy? The paranoia that once scared Kronos so much had evidently been passed on to his own children. Zeus and Metis had married after so long being together, and it was soon after that the happy couple had become expecting parents. All of Olympus had been overjoyed with tears of joy from Rhea, so happy to find out she was to become a grandmother, which for so long she thought would never be possible. Olympus had been thrown into celebration, with the immortals all wishing the couple the best of luck in the coming months and the women all telling Metis they would be there to aid her in bringing the child into the world. All was well until whispers of a prophecy made its way into the ears and mind of Zeus. It was said that the son that Metis carried would one day surpass him and would one day take his place as the king of Olympus. That the same would happen to him as it did to his father and his grandfather before him. Zeus had done everything he could to try and stall the birth of this child, but everything he did ended up being futile. He didn't dare tell others what he knew in case they tried to aid Metis and his unborn son. Ultimately he decided to do what he thought was best. Zeus led the pregnant Metis to a location far from Olympus and away from the prying eyes of the other gods, and did as his father had done so many years ago. He devoured Metis and the unborn child and locked them deep inside of him, where they would never be able to disrupt his reign as the king. The reactions from the others were as expected, appalled and ashamed, while his mother had viciously slapped him for doing such an evil act to the woman he supposedly loved. When Naruto had learned what Zeus had done to his own wife and child, it had taken Hestia every ounce of power and love towards him to calm him down. As the god of fatherhood, he was appalled and livid that Zeus had devoured his own wife and child, not caring for their lives and only for his own position of power. He was supposed to be a father and a husband first and then a king. It was during this act that Naruto clung to the title of fatherhood with all his might and made an oath to himself that he would never do to his own future children what Zeus had done to his with Metis. Will you wait here for me or will you return to the atmosphere? Hestia asked as she put the dark memory to the back of her mind. She could sense Demeter approaching her temple, as did Naruto. I'll go back. Will I see you there after the wedding? You will. I'll be a few hours with the main ceremony after all. I'll stay a little while at the reception before leaving. Parties never were your thing. I'll see you soon, Naruto said warmly before giving her a peck on the lips before he left in a small cyclone of air back to his home. Just as he did, Demeter walked in her own beautiful made dark green chiton with golden stitching on the sides. Her neck and arms were covered in beautiful gemstones and looked more expensively dressed than modest-looking Hestia. Are you ready, sister? Yes, I'm ready. Let's go celebrate. Atlantis. As expected, the wedding was a very beautiful and extravagant affair with everyone from both sides of the family being there. All of the daughter were there to celebrate the marriage between their sister and the new ruler of the ocean, including all of the sons and the latest additions to Oceanus and Tethys' always growing family. The main halls and throne room of Atlantis were lit up beautiful, and everything had been tastefully designed with the help of Rhea. Both wanted their son and brother's day of matrimony to be one to remember for as long as they lived. In the middle of the hall was the groom and bride, both staring happily and contently at one another as they slow danced in front of everyone. The celebration had been wonderful and plenty had happened. Now everyone was watching the happy couple while being able to take a breather. It was a very beautiful ceremony, don't you think? Rhea spoke as she watched her son dance with his wife with a happy and content smile. She knew just by looking at the two that this was going to be a marriage that would last. Amphitrite would be the calmness to the sea's rage, the one true queen of the sea. Beside her Hestia watched as well, having kicked off her shoes moments ago to rest, having been asked to dance by many of the men trying to woo her. She hoped the blonde in her life hadn't seen. It was. Hera did a wonderful job in organizing the reception. The title of Goddess of Marriage is well placed. Hestia smiled, watching Amphitrite laugh at something Poseidon whispered to her. Hestia knew Poseidon well, probably the best out of her three brothers, but she knew just by watching them together it was marriage that would last. It would have its bumps for sure, but she knew together they would be strong enough to get through them. Though I feel we might have another one on our hands soon, Hestia added as both she and Rhea turned their heads and noticed that their sister Hera was getting a lot of attention from Zeus, who had barely left her alone all day. Since Hera had gone to live with her aunt and uncle, her temper had been much more controlled and was actually very happy where she was. But by looking at the marriage of Tethys and Oceanus and the love they had for one another, she was quickly beginning to crave something similar. I'm not sure whether I should be worried or overjoyed at the prospect, Rhea admitted. Her youngest daughter and youngest son had big personalities and equally large egos and tempers. It was either going to be great or downright terrifying. Since we're on the topic of marriage, Hestia picked up the tone from Rhea's voice and mentally groaned. She could see where this was leading. You've been together more than a decade. You both love each other. You spend most of your free time together when you're not doing your duties or with your sisters. Why not get married to Naruto? It would be a wonderful way to introduce him to the others. All Rhea wanted was to see 7 Albanian licks of her children finally together. But Hestia knew that was more difficult than Rhea was asking. It's too risky. You've seen Zeus. How paranoid he has been becoming lately. Bringing Naruto in could cause more problems. And knowing Naruto as well as I do, if Zeus ever harmed a hair on you or I, well, I think we both know Olympus wouldn't still be standing. I suppose you're right, at least for now. I just want to see you all together. I know, Mother. One day it will happen. But we have an eternity to think about it. It'll happen when it's ready to happen, Hestia comforted before turning back to watching the bride and groom. Over the years, Hestia had come home to many situations. Many had made her laugh, and some had made her angry, but most often, they gave her peace. Unlike her family on Mount Olympus, there were no fights or arguments here. No one would ever be power-hungry enough to devour their loved ones or be paranoid enough to banish family. There were only warmth, coziness and love. And it didn't come in the form of a fascinating inferno or a passionate wave like Hera and Demeter had told her, but in a simple smile. "You're home early," greeted a cheerful and affectionate voice. "How was the wedding?" It was a beautiful smile. It wasn't forced or fake, it was genuine and homely. It made her feel comfortable and safe. She needed no masks or restraint in front of him. She was entirely free to be herself while knowing beyond a doubt that the man smiling at her will always love her no matter what. It was what made every trip home a blessing. It was what assured the goddess that she had her own family. Hestia melted into Naruto's arms and smiled against his chest. "It was fine, but I was homesick." Naruto chuckled. "You were away for 4 hours. Yep, so 4 hours too long." The blonde smiled and combed his fingers through Hestia's silky hair, kissing her temple tenderly as he did. "Well, I missed you too." Perhaps it was because Naruto had no relation to Kronos, but he was nothing like her other brothers. His eyes wouldn't wander and follow whenever a pretty goddess would walk past, nor would he sleep with anyone willing. He had no regard to his own power and wouldn't flaunt his strength to show his authority. Hestia was never one to take sides within her family, but she truly believed that Naruto would make a much better and benevolent king than Zeus, and infinitely better as a husband. That certainly made Hestia recall her most recent discussion with her mother. Hey, I want to show you something. Hestia made a small pout and whined cutely into his chest. Now? I'm tired and you're warm. I want to go to bed. She may not have revoked her vow to be a virgin, but she certainly loved to share the bed with Naruto. He made a better pillow than any kind of celestial feathers and would keep her warm better than any blanket. Let's just snuggle and sleep. Naruto's smile grew and hugged Hestia tighter. That sounds amazing, but this will only take a second. He brushed a finger along her smooth cheek as she looked up at him. Follow me. Hestia was surprised that Naruto brought them to the place they never visit, his throne room. Unlike Zeus, who enjoyed lounging on his throne constantly with his lightning bolt in his hand, Naruto could practically count the times he sat on his throne. He would usually enjoy the fresh air in the gardens or lay around on a cloud, never look down at people from his throne. Why are we here? Asked the goddess, looking around the beautifully crafted throne room that was not unlike Zeus on Olympus, only without the constant threat of being struck by lightning. Naruto wrapped his arms around Hestia tenderly from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. What do you think of my throne? It's nice, I guess, answered the goddess as she rested back against his chest. It is certainly different than Zeus on Olympus. Instead of looking like a gigantic throne that was made for his full godly form, it was a simple chair of white gold made for his everyday form. You know, I like it. It's elegant because it's simple. Naruto smiled and nodded as Hestia raised a brow. But wait, did you move it or something? Hestia tilted her head and wondered if the throne was edged to the right a bit. It's not in the center anymore. Yeah, I had to make some room. For what? Naruto held Hestia tighter and kissed her cheek from behind. For this. He snapped his fingers and a ray of light shone down right next to his throne, and Hestia's eyes widened as another throne, exactly like Naruto's own, appeared out of thin air. The throne for my queen. Hestia struggled to stay on her feet, much less utter a word. The blonde gently moved in front of Hestia and dropped to his knees, holding onto her hands in his own. I love you, Hestia. The goddess had tears welling in her eyes and bit her lower lip, looking down at Naruto, shaking. I honestly can't imagine living a single day without you. I need you, Hestia. He kissed her knuckles softly as he stared up into her eyes. I want you to be by my side forever. I want you to be my queen. He licked his lips and exhaled slowly to calm himself. Hestia, will you marry me? The smallest hint of hesitation passed through Hestia's eyes. The reasoning she had when speaking with her mother annoyingly surfaced. She was right. Exposing Naruto's existence would jeopardize the peace of the world. A war between the upper air and Olympus would be no less catastrophic than the war with the Titans. Worst of all, Hestia would be forced to make a choice, to help her full-blooded siblings or to aid the man she loved. But her feelings ultimately annihilated her reasoning. She wanted to be Naruto's wife more than anything. The tears finally escaped Hestia's eyes as she managed the tiniest of nods. Why yes. She fell to her knees and stared into Naruto's relieved eyes. Yes. Naruto gently brushed her tears away and kissed her softly on the lips. Yes, 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 she muttered against his lips. Naruto held her close and rested his forehead against hers. You've really made me the happiest being alive, he whispered softly with a smile. For the rest of eternity, I will spend each living second trying to make you as happy as you've made me. Hestia couldn't even utter a reply and merely nodded as her tears fell. I swear to the river Styx that I will love you for the rest of my life and I will be faithful to you for all eternity. Order and chaos strike me down if I ever break these vows. Hestia kissed him to silence him. You don't have to say any more, she whispered as softly as the wind. I know all that already, and I don't need reassurance. She kissed him again before she stared into his loving eyes. I also swear to the river Styx that I will forever be faithful and loyal to you. From now on, I will always be by your side, as your wife and as your queen. The blonde tenderly kissed his fiancé's cheek, and you. There had never been a better night for both immortals, and never had their future together promised more joy or hope. This is the end of this story. I hope you all liked the video and subscribe to my channel. And please watch other playlists I make. And please help me grow my channel. And please recommend me any Naruto stories you all like to listen. I hope you all fine.